Peace and love, Black family. Thank you so much. I actually listened to your advice that I need to actually open a YouTube channel. I don't have much stronger equipment for the moment, but I think it's a good start. So I'm going to discuss the difference, if there is, between African nationalism and Pan Africanism. Now, I got invited in 2018 to the University of Pretoria to do a public lecture on African nation, no, on black nationalism. What is it? Blackness and reparations. So I was invited by a Pan Africanist branch there in the University of Pretoria. And I was attacked actually. There were Pan Africanists who believe that there's an ideological difference between black nationalism, as what most Africans in the diaspora call it, and African nationalism. Compared to Pan Africanism, yes, there's an ideological difference. So I was shocked because let's actually define, African nationalism. In Africa, it's African nationalism. Most Americans calling it black nationalism, but it's the same thing. African nationalism only asserts, it's not even an ideology, it's a way of life, only asserts that Africans from home and abroad, right? Africans from home and abroad are a nation, right? So which means Africa for Africans. Now, what is a nation? A nation is a group of people with the same biological and genetic history, the same kinship, the same racial group, the same, culture, spirituality, and in the basis of spirituality, that's what makes an African. I think it was Kwame Nkrumah who said, "I'm not an African because I was born in Africa," for which most white people usually call themselves Africans, for which they're not. I'm African because Africa was born in me. That's why when you come across black people in America, they call them African Americans, but they're not born in Africa. But Africa is born in them, but they're born in America, so that's why they call them African Americans, or what we call Africa in the diaspora. So Africa is not necessarily a continent. Africa is a spiritual system that is genetically and biologically linked to the darker people of the world. So we say African nationalism to acknowledge that whether you have been taken during chattel slavery and the Atlantic slave trade to the diaspora in the form of the US, being traded by Jewish clients all over the world to different slave plantations and so forth, you are an African. We recognize you as part of the African nation, worldwide African nation. Now, Pan-Africanism is still the same thing. It acknowledges that Africa is for Africans, from home and abroad. I think Marcus Garvey played a bigger role in advancing Pan-Africanism or black nationalism. By Africa for Africans, he even asserts the fact that if Europe is for Europeans, if Asia is for Asians, if Australia is for Australians, Africa somehow should be for Africans, home and abroad. This is a home of the darker people of the world. So Pan-Africanism also acknowledge, in fact, it became an extreme part of African nationalism, because African nationalism is a way of life. It's what we are. So Pan-Africanism advances the philosophy of African nationalism. And you're not going to deny that, because I think this is the response I should have given to the student. If you talk about the likes of Robert Sobukwe, who founded the Pan-African Congress in South Africa, and then your branches of the Pan-Africanist movement here in South Africa actually are part of the same tree as the Pan-African Congress is founded by Robert Sobukwe, the likes of Apim Da. I think because Anton Limbede passed on while still in the African National Congress Youth League, but I believe they will have moved, because all Africanists, they left the ANC Youth League because they realized that the ANC was pro-communist, was more comfortable with the liberals, was more soft on the liberal white supremacists. So that's why they actually deviated to propagate, or rather to advance the idea of Africa for African nationalism. Both of them actually have acknowledged that the African nationalists, the likes of A.P.M. Da, the likes of Robert Sobukwe. So there is no difference between African nationalism and Pan-African Congress. I mean, no, not Pan-African Congress, because that's a political organization. I'm talking about Pan-Africanism. I think one of the things that one of the students there outlined was the fact that, okay, well, what do you say on the fact that the men who advocated for black power that extreme, the likes of Kwame Ture, otherwise born Stokely Carmichael, he deviated from the black power movement, what we call the black nationalist movement, associated with the likes of the ideas of Malcolm X, the ideas of Garvey, and also the Black Panther Party, which was an extreme descendant of the black nationalism in the African diaspora, particularly in the States. They asked, but I mean, he has moved from black nationalism to Pan-Africanism. The reason why that was a political decision, because the Black Panther Party, they were communists, and within the Black Panther Party, they were feminists, the likes of Angela Davis. And again, within the Black Panther Party, not only were they communists and Marxists, they were Hebrew Israelites. Hebrew Israelites don't regard black as one with Africa. They don't regard black people, all black people coming from Africa. They have got some strange ideology to say black people are from, Hebrew Israelites. They believe that they are from the Middle East, not associated to Africa, and Africans have sold them into slavery. So you can understand at that time that Stokely had to make a political decision. He wouldn't associate with that. It does not mean that because the Black Panther Party advanced Marxism, communism, and Hebrew Israelism, and also feminism, therefore, they are our only reference regarding African nationalism. People do wrong. I mean, for instance, the Pan-Africanist Congress of South Africa is a political organization. There might be things which are not even associated to the idea of Pan-Africanism. Steve Biko, with the Black Consciousness Movement, he was an African nationalist, but he was advancing the self-determination of Africans. You could rather regard him as an Africanist, regard him as a Pan-Africanist, or an African nationalist. You do not need to coin this. The problem is we want political belonging and ownership, a sense of ownership. You know, students even attack me and say, no, man, we dismiss the likes of Garvey. W.B. Du Bois dismissed him a long time ago. He was a populist. Really? Marcus Garvey was never a populist, my friend. Marcus Garvey plays the big role in what you refer to as the Black Wall Street. Marcus Garvey's Negro Improvement Association, when they say back to Africa, it was not ontological, just ontological satisfactory purposes. It was there. He advanced. He even had ships. The NUIA had the Black Star Line, my friend. Organized 6 million black people. He was an organizer. He advanced these ideals. He didn't just become a road. So W.B. Du Bois, yes, was a Pan-Africanist, but he was a human being too. So you can't say because there was this particular group who condemned Marcus Garvey, therefore we did not acknowledge. These are not ideas. This is a way of life. The reason why we end up advancing Pan-Africanism advances African nationalism. This is because throughout 400 years of dehumanizing and exploitation, we lost out. They destroyed our history. They destroy our memory. They destroy the love of self, the knowledge of self, taking pride in self, and acknowledging ourselves as human beings. So if you have been dehumanized, psychologically destroyed, scientifically controlled and manipulated, it must be advanced and actually fueled back into the lives and the minds of black people. I say peace and love, and hoping to do this YouTube channel consistently on a daily basis. Say much love.